country needs you.
We're not going to die here.
Stay with the mission, and together we can pave the way to a better life for all of our future generations to come.
What you just saw was the trailer for my short film Manifest, specifically made for the Higgsfield Global Film Festival, where everything by the script, direction and edit had to be AI generated. In this video I'm going to take you behind the scenes to explain some of the ideas buried beneath it all because, well, there are quite a few. But before any of that, here's the film.
Your country needs you, the Emerald Generation, to fix the mistakes of the past. Stay with the mission, and together we can pave the way to a better life for all of our future generations to come. Do not be vindictive, for oil has given us so much and allowed our forefathers to build the greatest civilization there ever was, at justified cost.
I'll fix this. Panels are fine, but it's not taking any charge.
Elias?
I can fix this.
False wings. At least 2 of them.
Get the shepherd.
It's empty.
Don't worry. They're smart. They know what it is.
We're not going to die here.
And they know what it does. See? Everything's fine.
I'm not so sure, and I don't want to take the risk.
The veil it is, then.
We're being too loud. I hate this place. Please, Elias.
Sorry. It's just that...
I'm not dying in here. That's my last one.
Can we really give up?
It is your duty as the Emerald generation to fix the mistakes of the past. The future depends on it.
Mara.
The world's gone, and we're wasting our lives. Here, we'll build a life here.
Roof split.
You'll fix it.
I give it 2 years before the veil takes it.
Please, Elias. I'm sorry.
So it all started with the two characters, Elias and Mara, although originally they were supposed to be me and my wife, Martina. I have this philosophy when it comes to AI-driven work where I feel like it should always be a bit of a hybrid piece. If there's more of an opportunity to put yourself into the work, then that's always a win for me. So the original plan, at least, was to digitize ourselves, use our own likeness, record the voices, and essentially play the characters. But then we read the rules properly, and it turns out that everything had to be AI generated in totality by the script and edit, and with no deliberate likeness to real people, including ourselves. Thus, Elias and Mara were born. Elias as a reference to my music page, Alias Here, and Mara because it sounded like a fun sci-fi evolution of Marty. I guess in a way they would become our slightly dystopian AI alter egos. Once I'd decided who the characters were, I needed to figure out what they were going to do throughout the film, and weirdly enough, I found the answer on my desk. It was this, a little stress ball in the shape of a truck that Marty got from her logistics job. It's sitting on my desk because Adobe crashes on me 5 times a day and it drives me mental. But it got me thinking about this idea of work, and that work is supposed to be something that essentially exists in the background as you get on with the rest of your life. But I think for both me and Marty, and probably a lot of people who've existed in the corporate world, there are times where work quietly becomes life. So I knew within this film I wanted to explore that idea, but I didn't just want it to be about a delivery, getting something from point A to B. I thought that was a good idea for the linear aspect of the story. But I wanted the deeper story underneath it all to be about the relationship between Elias and Mara in regards to how much they're having to give up to continue doing what's expected of them in the world that they exist within. In this universe that our characters exist within, it's an exaggerated version of our own, really, where there's been this climate catastrophe, where the previous generations have maybe just extracted a little too much from the planet and they've left everlasting damage that the younger generations are now having to deal with. And I wanted to explore that idea a little bit further because when we do eventually get to the point of no return, we're not going to stop looking for solutions. And I thought, wouldn't it be interesting if we found a way to convert water into a jade-like substance to create a more efficient solar technology in the pursuit of clean energy? And what if at some point a runaway system essentially started encountering a paperclip maximizer style of problem, where if the jade is considered to create clean energy, then logically more jade must mean more clean energy. So it just started converting all of the seawater into this mineral, which is another climate catastrophe. And if I really think about it, I've definitely been inspired by Guild Wars factions as well. I was absolutely obsessed with that game when I was a kid, and they had their own Jade Sea, and I always thought, oh, wouldn't it be cool to see what this kind of style would look like in a live action world? And I've been able to do it, which is very cool, maybe a decade and a half later. But broadly speaking, in the world that I've built, let's just say that things aren't going too well for humanity. They have this generational tension that's running underneath the world, where the people who are young and capable enough to fix the world are expected to do it. They're expected to risk their lives for a problem that they didn't really create. And Elias and Mara are unfortunately part of that generation, and they're just exhausted. But they keep on going because well, that's what we're all supposed to do. One of my big concerns going into this was the dialogue. I've never especially had good results from AI voice generation before. And because it was a competition entry, I didn't want the entire film resting on whether I could make a synthetic sounding performance convincing. So I deliberately wrote very little dialogue. I set that limitation early, and I wanted the world to tell a lot of the story itself. I wanted this place that I was creating to feel like an ecosystem rather than a backdrop. So in the desert, you've got these creatures like the spinejack, false wings, jade wings, and pale crest. Inside the pallid forest, you get the veil moths, shelfbacks, root skitters, pallid striders, and the big bad root listener. And around the Jade Sea, we see things like the cragline and the glassback, alongside some of the species that we've seen earlier in the film. None of them are really essential to understanding the wider ideas of the plot, but they definitely make the world feel fuller and give us a sense that there's more going on than just Elias and Mara's story. I also deliberately divided the film into 3 very distinctive biomes: the desert, the forest, and the Jade Sea. It's a very literal 3-act structure, and once I'd decided that these different biomes essentially represented the beginning, middle, and end, I had to start thinking a little bit deeper on what each of those sections and what those places could actually mean. The next question that I had was, what would Elias and Mara actually be transporting? And interestingly enough, the idea resolved rather quickly. I decided that the technology that they'd be delivering would contain something living, a restoration unit. I've said it a lot of times on the channel before, but I tend to think of technology as an amplifier of intention. Technology itself is never really bothered whether you're doing a moral good or bad thing. It just helps you do more of the thing that you want to do. So the restoration unit became a nice encapsulation of that idea. It's an advanced technology carrying this biological material designed to slowly turn this artificial jade back into water. Nature and technology coming together, which really is the heart of the solarpunk genre. Water also carries a lot of symbolic baggage with it, which is wisdom, renewal, and life. So the entire journey becomes this movement from one psychological state over to another. They start in this desert. It's a depleted version of the old world. They pass through the forest, which is representative of the unknown, and they eventually arrive at the Jade Sea in this unstable future created by technology, and their job is to bring something living into that future to begin repairing it, which is deliberately paradoxical.
Your country needs you, the Emerald Generation, to fix the mistakes of the past.
We're introduced to Elias and Mara and the wider world through this broadcast right at the beginning of the film, towards the so-called Emerald Generation. And rather than explaining how they feel about any of this, we see it through their reactions. They're tired. They've heard it all before. They've probably spent most of their adult lives being told just how important their generation is, while simultaneously being handed increasingly unpleasant jobs. It's not uncommon to feel undervalued for working hard these days. I mean, we see it time and time again, don't we? High effort, it doesn't equate to success anymore. In many ways, at least in the Western world, you're actually viewed to be winning if you do less and profit more. And that's why those themes are so prevalent in this film. But regardless of the broken system, they continue, because that's what we all do. At the beginning of the journey, Mara actually notices an abandoned greenhouse at the South Way station. It's a tiny moment that most people will probably miss, but it's really important to the story. We don't know it yet, but she's already beginning to consider another way of life. I speak a lot with Marty about packing it all in, starting a homestead and living off the land, you know, making Stardew Valley real. So that was the motivation for her exit. A life designed around building your own future rather than building that of others. And then the vehicle breaks down, and symbolically, that's the first real fracture in their shared sense of purpose. Elias immediately says, "I'll fix it." He's talking about the vehicle, but as you can see in Mara's reaction, tells us that she's heard some version of this sentence before. And if you look closely at the map that Mara carries, she's already circled the South Way station and has written "good ground." It's a small detail, but it signifies that her attention isn't entirely on the mission anymore. Part of her is already somewhere else. Elias, meanwhile, well, he throws himself into repairing the vehicle. He's trying to rebuild the thing that keeps them moving. And because he's so focused on the problem, he misses what Mara is trying to tell him. She spots danger, and instead, he wrongly assumes that she is frustrated with him.
Elias?
I can fix this.
And that little miscommunication leaves them vulnerable at exactly the wrong moment. You see, two false wings have appeared on the ridge. They're opportunistic predators. They don't attack Elias and Mara when they're strong. They appear when they're stranded, distracted, and exposed, which unfortunately is often how power works. They've positioned themselves above our characters, physically looking down on them. The visual language is there to demonstrate the false wing's advantage. Mara reaches for the resonance shepherd. Now, the shepherd, it isn't really a conventional weapon. In the lore, I've designed it to make an unpleasant sound. Instead of killing wildlife, it simply scares it away. I've made that distinction deliberately, inspired by the fact that my wife has recently become vegan. We watched Clarkson's Farm a couple of months back, and it's put her off eating meat entirely. I've lowered my intake to offset my own carbon footprint because in my line of work, we do tend to use a lot of energy. I want to find balance, but for me, it's not this black and white issue. But this new dynamic in our own personal lives has definitely made its way into the film. You see, in this world, much like our own really, human beings have already caused a lot of damage to the wider ecosystem. So in this universe, Elias and Mara and most of the people alive, they don't want to continue on this negative path of causing damage. Hence, they would rather use a weapon that irritates and makes enemies retreat than directly use violence. The problem is though, their weapon, the shepherd, it's not charged. And symbolically that represents me not being able to fully embrace veganism. I'm only dipping my toe in. And then back in the film, our two characters find themselves in this situation where a sort of power play is happening, where these predators are going to use dominating force against them, and they have to essentially bluff, even though they might not have the willingness to exercise an efficient defense. In that moment, Mara says, "We're not going to die here." Remember that line because she says something very similar later on. The bluff ultimately ends up working and the false wings retreats, but we hear something much larger beyond the ridge. A storm begins to roll in. So Elias and Mara are actually left with two choices: stay exactly where they are in familiar territory in the past and wait for something dangerous to find them, or enter the forest, the unknown. Neither option is safe, but they choose movement. There's another layer to the desert that comes from some of my more recent work around Carl Jung and the Red Book. Jung repeatedly encounters desert imagery when entering his inner world. It's empty, hostile, and stripped of distraction. For me, it made it an interesting representation of a depleted traditional world. Everything useful has already been extracted, and the structures that once provided stability, they no longer offer the same opportunities to the people coming afterwards. And in that environment, the creatures that thrive here are the ones who are willing to dominate, and simply put, Elias and Mara, they aren't willing to do that, which is ultimately why their weapon is useless. They survive through restraint rather than conquest, and eventually the old world, it becomes dangerous enough that entering the unknown actually feels like the safer option. To enter the forest, Elias and Mara have to put on these uncomfortable gill masks. I wanted to make the masks look strange without completely hiding the actors' faces, so they're built around the same Jade technology that already exists within the world. They're evasive, uncomfortable, and slightly unnatural, but they allow the characters to continue. It's, again, technology amplifying intention. They take this restoration unit and they enter the pallid forest. Pallid literally refers to an unhealthy paleness, and the whole environment is designed to feel sickly. It represents anxiety, the fear that comes with stepping into something unfamiliar and having absolutely no guarantee that things will work out. Traditionally, Western audiences tend to read left to right movement as forward progress, so reversing that subtly makes their journey feel wrong. And it's a little bit of a nod to Bong Joon-ho, who's used this technique in Snowpiercer and Parasite. Then Elias makes a mistake. It's a sound that echoes around the forest. That quickly became another metaphor, because anyone who's tried something new, entering the unknown territory, they'll probably recognize this feeling. You can fail quietly 100 times doing something conventional and no one really cares, but make one mistake whilst trying something strange and suddenly it feels incredibly loud.
We're being too loud.
The animals around Elias, they immediately disappear into the forest, which also reflects something I've noticed around AI filmmaking. A lot of people experimenting with these tools, they are extremely quiet about it because they know how quickly being associated with AI can make you a target to those too afraid to walk the path. Elias, he isn't like that. He's fascinated by the environment, he experiments, he makes noise. His curiosity, it's my own curiosity. Mara, meanwhile, is having a miserable time.
I hate this place.
She's injured, she's anxious, she doesn't trust the forest. In reality, Marty is very supportive of me, but she does worry like most people do when you journey into the unknown. And the more that Elias experiments, the more attention he draws towards the both of them. And I was thinking of the animator and director George Gutierrez when I wrote this scene. He wanted to give creators the authority over AI tooling, as he believed that creative minds should be the ones leading the direction. But very quickly, the anti-AI mob threatened his family, bullying him out of his position out of fear for his children's lives. It was a celebrated victory online, but it didn't stop the development of the tooling. It just made the people who use it become far quieter, much like the creatures existing in the forest. Eventually, Mara asks Elias in her own slightly frustrated way to be careful. Elias is finally about to have a more grounded conversation with her until the root listener arrives. The character design for the root listener actually started out loosely inspired by the Leshy from Slavic mythology, but my version is blind. It understands the world through vibration. The forest itself becomes a sort of sensory network. And thinking about the forest in that way actually gave me an idea for another metaphor. What's a network that requires an overwhelming amount of sound to function? That's right, it's social media. Think about it, everything is connected, information travels through it, and one of the dangers of social media is that the people reacting most aggressively to something, they often don't have the full picture. The root listener literally can't see the whole picture. It simply follows the loudest vibration. He's a physical threat representing what the mob feels. And right now, the loudest thing in the forest is Elias experimenting with technology. He hasn't exactly kept his head down. So now something hostile has come looking for him. Its body is pale like the forest, but it's lean instead of sickly. It's a creature that has weaponized its fear and anxiety. Elias's eyes, they dart towards the resonance shepherd, the same non-lethal deterrent from earlier, but this time he considers using it violently. And that is an important moment for him, because if Elias represents someone who is enthusiastic about technology, there is this temptation to respond to hostility with hostility, to take something fundamentally defensive and turn it into a weapon because you feel attacked. Mara, though, she shakes her head and she brings him back into balance and restraint. Whatever happens, they're still trying not to become the thing that they're frightened of. So instead, Elias puts his experimental device down on the log. He does it gently in a non-threatening way, so the root listener can expect the device at its own pace. And that is probably the most self-referential part of him, because that's essentially what I try to do on my YouTube channel. I take a technology that a lot of people are deeply suspicious of and put it somewhere non-threatening, and I say, hey, look at this. Here's what it can do. Here's what I think is interesting about it. And the hope really is that demonstrating might be more useful than arguing with people. But what tends to happen on social media the second the noise stops around a topic, well, the mob, it immediately goes looking for the next loudest thing. And so the root listener leaves chasing the next biggest sound. And this time, Mara says,
I'm not dying in here.
Earlier she said, we're not going to die here. Now it's, I'm not dying in here. It's a tiny change, but it's a moment where Mara begins to openly separate what she wants from what Elias wants. They remove their gill masks, they hit the ground with a heavy thud, and the exploration of the unknown is over. They emerge from the forest and return to open ground, except for now they're moving from left to right. The visual language here has corrected itself. They've survived the unknown. And even though they've not solved all of their problems, there's a little more certainty in the way in which they're moving. We also start to see an array of wildlife, different elements of the journey. There's the glassback reflecting the idea that the physical and emotional journey is slow moving. The crag lion represents resilience and physical strength. And then Elias spots a pale crest hunting a jade wing. The jade wing is smaller, weaker, and clearly outmatched, but it escapes, signifying that power doesn't automatically determine the outcome. And then finally, they reach the settlement. Elias installs the restoration unit, it activates, there's this little pulse, and the smallest amount of jade turns back into water. That's it. You could quite reasonably call it a failure, really, but it's really not the point. Their entire journey has produced this tiny amount of water, a tiny amount of wisdom. They aren't enlightened from their journey, and they're definitely not saving the world this time around, but they have moved the needle ever so slightly forward. And sometimes for all of your effort, that's all you get. They walk into the mailroom, no one's there to welcome them or celebrate the mission's success, if you can call it that. There's no thank you, and much like in the corporate world, you can deliver that urgent task only to find that the deadline was made up or the project wasn't that important anyway. So after risking their lives to complete the job, Elias, he has to stamp his own manifest, and I think that'll feel familiar to a lot of creative people too. I've spoken in some of my field notes videos on what it actually means to make things, and one uncomfortable truth is that if you're genuinely experimenting, pushing into unfamiliar territory, making unusual work, most people, they aren't necessarily going to care, at least not immediately. People tend to become interested once the thing has already been validated by money, numbers, awards, or status, which means a lot of creative people spend enormous amounts of time doing work that is undervalued whilst actually doing it. That's why eventually the process has to give you something, because the destination unfortunately rarely does. And throughout the film, Mara has slowly been reaching exactly that conclusion. She's been quitting throughout the entire film, we just haven't heard her say it yet. So when she says the words, "This is my last one," Elias is devastated. She walks away to discover another ruined greenhouse, a reflection of the one that she saw earlier at the South Way station. Nearby there's a broken camera, a relic someone else once tried to capture the world with. And then she finds herself this rusty gardening tool. Simple old technology, something designed to help a person shape the world directly in front of them. Admittedly, it's something that's been on my mind a lot since we've been landscaping our garden, and more recently we've got a mini greenhouse ourselves in an attempt to be more self-sustaining. But Elias, he comes looking for her, and Mara launches into this exaggerated, sarcastic performance that deliberately echoes the radio broadcast from the beginning of the film.
Can we really give up?
It is your duty as the Emerald generation to fix the mistakes of the past. The future depends on it.
All the rhetoric about sacrifice, purpose, saving the future, being part of this incredibly important generation, and she's just heard enough of it. The core of this moment, which I hope bleeds through, is that she's sick of the grind. She wants Elias and herself to put themselves before the work, and she's ultimately lost faith in the life that they've been living. Everything they do is for someone else. Every danger they face is supposedly in the service of a greater good. And she's realized that she wants some part of her existence to belong to them. To continue the mission would mean traveling back to the past to continue the loop of their current routine. Instead, she wants to stay in the settlement, in the symbolic future, and she wants to fix the greenhouse, build something, grow something. And initially, Elias resists. Partly because he genuinely believes in the mission, and partly because accepting Mara's argument would mean admitting perhaps that the mission isn't enough. So when she talks about staying, he focuses on practical problems. The roof is split. I mean, it's easier to argue about a roof than an entire philosophy of life, and Mara simply gives him his own line back. "You'll fix it."
You'll fix it.
Earlier, Elias used that sentence to reassure Mara that he'd keep their existing life moving forward. Now, Mara uses it to reassure Elias that they can build a different one. And then Elias says, "I give it 2 years before the veil takes it," alluding to the fact that the anxiety of the unknown will likely resurface again if they spend too much time in the future. Which is the final complication, really, because he's probably right. If everyone stops doing the difficult work of repairing the world, then the world doesn't magically repair itself. It requires having people on the fringe to bring wisdom back to the group. So Elias is left with a horrible decision in this moment. Keep serving the mission and placing the work over his relationships, or choose prioritizing his relationships and stop doing something he genuinely believes matters. And there isn't really a clean answer, and that's intentional.
I'm sorry.
My actual philosophy in life is more aligned with finding balance. I think making the ending ambiguous in this way, it leaves more questions for the audience to ask themselves, which I think a good film should probably do. It's quite a sad little story, and making it actually revealed more to me than I initially expected. I've been reading a lot about Hermeticism recently, and there's obviously a lot of Jungian themes that run throughout the film, but underneath all of that, I do think Manifest ended up being about my own difficulties finding balance. A lot of the content that I make on this channel, outside of the silly meme videos that inexplicably outperform everything else revolves around psychology, meaning, technology, and what it feels like to exist in a world that's changing faster than we're really equipped to process. And I'd like to think that there's some value in the work that I'm doing. I think that by exploring these things openly and honestly, maybe someone else will find something useful within them too. But the uncomfortable truth is that making this kind of work, it takes an enormous amount of time, and that time, it has to come from somewhere. And very often, unfortunately for me, it comes from relationships and from rest. So there's obviously quite a lot of me in Elias and quite a lot of my own fears in Mara. And it's one of the reasons I think the creative mediums in general are so valuable to us, because you can begin to make something believing that you fully understand what it means to make it, and then somewhere in that process, your subconscious quietly tells you what the thing is actually about. So I'll finish with this. I don't think the tools that someone uses to make something should be the thing that determines whether that work has value or not. A tool can make you faster, it can make certain things possible, and it can amplify what you're capable of doing. But it still needs an intention to amplify. And the important word there is your. I've watched a lot of entries for this festival now, and regardless of their technical quality, the ones that I've enjoyed the most have been the ones where I can feel that there's a person behind them. And that's ultimately what I was trying to do with Manifest. If you're actually interested in the more technical aspects of the film, how it was put together, the assets, and how they were used, the project's open source, it's up on Higgsfield, you can check it out. There's a link in the description below. And if you're one of the paid members watching this, I just want to say thank you so much for your kindness. I really appreciate it. Otherwise, I'm going to stop talking now. And thank you for watching the video. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you, hopefully, in the next one.